Bagseed Chronicles.
Being teenagers selling to police officers.
Aw, fuck. Hello, ho, 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 and welcome to the Bagseed Chronicles. Let's not wilt, let's flourish. I am Uncle Dig, your erstwhile host, imploring you to enjoy cannabis and get active. It's springtime, and springtime is the easiest time to enjoy the outdoors. Hey, don't overdo it though, eh? Wouldn't want to hurt yourself. There will not be a free shit segment today, as I didn't feel like doing one today, and I'm almost down to the bottom of the free box Claudius9 sent me, and I am enjoying their products so much. I want to take the time to really utilize the products and see how they do. I am happy to report the Atomic 9 is still chugging along, and I have now dropped it twice. So far, it's surviving being owned by me and working flawlessly. Today, I have a wonderful interview for you with Larry Aday, a homegrower and cannabis activist from my neck of the woods, Southern Oregon. And I will be airing part 1 today and part 2 in the next episode of the Bagseed Chronicles. I hope everyone enjoys hearing more radical voices from the cannabis liberation movement. But before all that, let's see what's been going on in my garden. Uncle Dig's garden update. It is 5:26. We are in gardening zone 8B, and I am almost completely done with my autoflower grow. In fact, I only have one autoflower left, the Tangerine Dream. She is basically finished. I just want to let the pot dry out for a day before I harvest her. I have 3 plants hanging. One, the Girl Scout Cookies auto, has been hanging since the beginning of the week, and the other 2, the Afghan Kush and Candy Cane, I harvested this morning. No idea on the yields yet, but I am excited to see. Now I do know how much the blackberry yielded. It yielded 1.5 ounces. That is a ½ ounce over my previous autoflower record and a ½ ounce over my previous indoor record. I have not been growing indoors very long. This weed tastes amazeballs. I am excited to see what the cure does for it. When I say it's like biting into a blackberry and that like fresh blackberry, like tartness just exploding in your mouth. I mean, maybe it's just the power of suggestion, but my mouth is watering just thinking about smoking some of this cannabis. It's so good. Now, all of my plants that I am personally growing outdoors are already outside and getting rooted well. I have 2 clones that I took off of one of them that are getting their complete harden off tomorrow. Now, for my photo periods, the 2 Amnesia Haze are showing pretty extreme sativa characteristics on their leaves and are starting to veg quite strongly. All of my plants are doing great right now. The 2 Fire of Maroofs are quite large, and I worry that I may have overdone it a bit. I have purchased a post driver, so no more driving T-post with a 4-pound hammer. So that's good. The Northern Lights is performing extremely well. She has a very beautiful broad leaves. The Canatonic is doing well. Nothing really significant to report with that plant. The CBD Dutch Treat doesn't seem to be as thirsty right now as the other plants. So I may have to lay off watering her for a while since there seems to be water collecting in the bottom of her smart pot. She isn't displaying any signs of overwatering or root rot, so I may have caught it in time. My sugar snap peas are doing well, and I hope to see them blooming soon. My peppers are all outdoors, and I will update you on those when I get them all up potted and figure out how many plants I'm actually keeping. I feel like I have more than 20 pepper plants, and I don't need that many for my little salsa garden. I go overboard a bit sometimes. Well, that's it for the garden update. Good luck this outdoor season. Let's get outside and let's overgrow the world. Larry Aday is a cannabis activist, home grower, and guerrilla grower OG who has been in Southern Oregon for a long time. He is the former director of the state of Jefferson NORML chapter and former operations manager for Voter Power. Welcome to the Bagseat Chronicles, Larry Aday.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, thanks for coming on. I've been wanting to talk to you a long time, but like I told you, I wanted to make sure I had audio equipment that would be adequate, and now I do. So here we are.
Well, sometimes you just got to do what you could do with what you got sometimes. What was that Donald Rumsfeld said it? We don't go to war with the army we want. We go to war with the army we got.
That's true. But I don't even know if I had the equivalent of a rifle when I was first starting recording this podcast.
Yeah. It was that way when we first started growing too. We didn't we had to do what we could with what we had.
Yeah, and I definitely wanted to talk about that. You've been growing since the 1970s, correct?
Yeah, we did. We got some seeds out of a brickweed,
right?
And that was probably, I think I was 13 or 12 or 13 years old.
Okay,
and we planted them over in the abandoned house next door.
Oh wow! Okay,
and away they went. And those were, we made our first mistakes. We showed them to some of the other neighborhood kids.
Oh no!
So as soon as they were really pretty, so we stole them.
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah.
And now this is in the East San Francisco Bay Area. It's really technically the San Joaquin Valley is where I'm from.
So you're from Cali.
And that's where we did it. And we had the optimum weather down there.
Right.
It was the perfect weather. And I grew up right on the delta where the San Joaquin River meets the Sacramento River. And just prime growing area and a lot of hideaway places.
Right.
Where you could actually do that kind of thing. So our second crop, we didn't show it to anybody. We planted them, and then as soon as they got big and beautiful and green, of course we picked them and smoked them and got headaches.
Yep.
So the following year was the year we really, really pulled it off. Sorry, I don't have the pictures with me. Bring them.
It happens.
But there was a Pacific Gas and Electric company down there with the power plants,
right?
And they were required to put vegetation around their power plants, for beautification purposes or whatever, and
be a good neighbor, right?
Yeah, and they were fenced in with not 6 foot, but these things had 8-foot barbed wire fences, anchor wire fence,
right,
with another couple feet of barbed wire.
Okay,
and they were fully irrigated, and it started out. We would sneak in. We figured out how to sneak in there. It's the statute of limitations is up, and my mother's retired. So anyway, I'll just say it. My mother was an employee there. I actually had a key to the gate.
Oh boy!
That key would open any of their facilities in the state of California.
Oh boy!
So we would sneak in there in the beginning and play Army when we were little kids.
Oh, in the old transformer stations.
That's what they were hiding, was the transformers.
Yeah,
and this is right there next to the right next to the power plant, the steam generation plant in Antioch technically is where it's from.
Okay.
And so we went in there with probably 1,000 seeds.
Oh wow! Okay.
And planted them.
Okay.
Spread them.
Okay. Just threw them willy nilly.
We threw them where the irrigation was.
Okay, so you threw them around where the irrigation.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And we got some males. They started turning with getting the seed pods on it, and I did show them to a kind of an older guy that we trusted him, and he came in and he said, "Well, first you got to pull all these. These are males. You got to pull them." Those were the most beautiful plants. Okay.
Right.
We weren't pulling anything. Okay, you're not pulling. No, we just grew these big, beautiful plants. You got to figure we're 15.
So the
We're
males,
15 years
of
old.
course, the males are a lot of
okay.
times for the listener. The males a lot of times are the most beautiful plants. They're the most vigorous, and a lot of times one of the first hints you'll have a male is that no matter what happens, it doesn't get deficiencies, and it just gets growing big and tall,
bigger and beautiful. And okay, there was no Ed Rosenthal,
right?
Okay, there was no Jorge Cervantes, and there was no information. It wasn't like you could go to the library and get a book, and even High Times then had bad information in it. But,
right.
But even if you got caught with a High Times, it was trouble. When I was a kid, you could get caught with a Playboy magazine. Your mother's going to yell at you. She's going to hand it to your dad.
Right.
He's going to come in and give you a scolding the whole time in the back of his mind, saying, "Thank you, Jesus." You know what I mean?
Right.
But if you got caught with a High Times,
right, oh yeah,
or any marijuana nomenclature or even paraphernalia, you could wind up in camp.
Well, right. That's how it was in Texas in the 90s for us. I mean, it was still like that.
Parents would kick kids out. Parents would call the police. So I don't want to digress there. Let's get back to the
growing,
the 1,000 seeds.
Right. Okay.
And we're 15 and 16 years old, respectively, me and my partner. And I don't know how many of them actually sprouted, but I'm going to say it was a good 80%.
Oh, wow.
And some of them hit 14, 15 feet tall.
Behind an 8-foot fence.
Well, but you got to figure the vegetation was so overgrown.
Oh.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
This was a jungle. We used to call it was like our little Vietnam where we could go in and play.
Right.
And right next to the road, but
cool.
A busy road.
Right.
And there was a lot of eucalyptus. There was a lot of weird different shrubbery in there.
Yeah.
Trees. And so it hid everything. The surrounding vegetation was still taller in some areas than the plants, but the plants, especially the males.
Yeah.
I'll show you the pictures one of these days.
I think you've shown me some.
Oh,
before.
I think I have, where I'm a little kid and the plants
Yeah.
are like 15, 16 feet high behind me.
Right, yeah.
But they're also males. But we just didn't understand.
Yeah.
And then that was the first time that we saw buds.
Okay.
We'd had the ragweed, the leaf.
Right.
We had some, the brickweed, the Mexican brickweed that would come up that was kind of buddy.
Right.
But none of us had ever seen an actual indica, there would have been sativas, but a bud.
Right.
Okay, a hard nug.
Yeah.
And we had we thought we had invented something.
Oh,
because
yeah,
the
man,
older
you've got
boys
that
were
good
not going to
shit.
sell us that stuff.
No.
We paid $10 a lid or an ounce. That's basically, well, it wasn't really a lid. Came in fingers. You
Okay.
could have a 5-finger lid would be an ounce.
Okay.
And then so it's a 1-finger lid or a 2-finger lid or 3-finger lid.
Gotcha.
So we would get a finger lid for $10 from the older boys that they had. They kept the buds and
Right.
sold us the leaf.
See, when I was a kid, the people who bought weed, they'd buy a dub sack, and they always buy it in increments of $20.
Yeah.
And a $20 sack had 2 fingers of weed in it. So you wanted to find a fat guy who sold weed because his fingers were fat as fuck.
Right, you had to stay away from the guys that sold matchboxes and stuff. That was like you get a matchbox full of weed. That was very common.
Let me sell you a couple of like really dried out nugs and a cigarette wrapper.
Yeah. So next thing you know, we've got buds. I mean, when we really thought we were doing something here, we were like, wow. And I will say this: we had females growing right next to males.
Yeah,
and that did not
Weird.
turn. Whereas a lot of them did, but there was that occasional one when you're growing, when you got probably 600 or 700 plants, big ones.
Yeah.
There was no way we could process it all.
Right now.
And so at that point, that's when we called in the older guys down
Right.
those guys down the street, them guys.
Yeah, those guys.
Those
yeah.
guys. And that's when the story became Jack and the Beanstalk, because when the beanstalks went up and the giants came down one at a time. I mean, we found ourselves as just teenagers involved with a lot of people we didn't want to be involved with.
Yeah.
And we lost most of the crop. A lot of it didn't even get harvested. Later on, some of it was stolen. People came back, but we still had. I mean, a teenage kid. Can you imagine walking into a room the size of this room here?
Yeah,
and full of garbage bags full of weed, and you're 15 years old.
Well, I mean, Larry, even as a like, let's say a 27-year-old man, the first time I ever saw weight, like someone had just pulled in a crop, or they still had half their crop from last year just sitting ready to go, and the first time I saw that, the first time you see it, you kind of shit the bed a little bit, especially when it's still illegal. Now it's kind of a different thing.
Right. Oh yeah, and we had no place to put it. We wound up trying to trade, and we couldn't get rid of it.
Yeah, and the more you try to trade with people, the more people know you have it.
Well, and that was and being children.
Yeah.
We were absolutely children. And that was really what got it started, and then it was not long after that we actually I met a guy, and that's the story of Blood and Bone.
Okay.
He took me up into the woods.
Oh boy! Okay.
Near Grass Valley, California.
How old were you?
Now I'm 16. This is the next year.
So is this this is what year are we now? 75, 76?
No, let me see. I was 78.
Okay, 70. Okay, that sounds about right.
Yeah, because in 1979 I was in 9th grade.
Okay,
and I graduated in 1982. So
okay,
so now I'm 16 years old, and I'm up in the in the woods in Northern California with a hippie grower that knew what he was doing.
Oh, fun!
And
also maybe not.
It was scary. That was more intense times, but we had to battle everything. We had to battle the ticks. Mm-hmm. And we had to lay a lot of pipe.
Well, yeah, I was getting water out there. It must be.
Well, that's where he had a mining claim.
Okay.
With an underwater suction dredge with a huge water pump.
Okay.
That, we're talking an 8-inch pump that pumped water.
He had a built-in reason to have it out there, too.
That was what we were doing. We were mining in quotation, air quotes there.
Okay.
We were mining. Right. And, but that's when he taught me about blood meal and bone meal.
Yeah.
And that was his thing.
I still use liquid bone meal sometimes. Well,
he repeated himself a lot, and he was like, "It's blood and bone, boy. We're gonna put the blood and bone on them." And
every day twice a week for weeks. That's what he's saying.
Right. And and we had to lay all this black poly pipe and bury it. And that was a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
And then and we did dig some ponds, line them with plastic,
right,
so that we could pump the water into it, for just in case.
And so that you were growing out there.
Oh yeah, and doing it right.
Okay.
And actually, I mean, it was all from seed. There was no cloning yet.
Right.
That didn't exist I know it existed, but didn't exist in our
right.
world.
It was a horticulture thing that hadn't made it to the grow scene yet.
Yeah, this was a long process.
Oh yeah,
and,
yeah.
So I learned how to sex plants. I learned how to grow, and that was actually our first encounters with the helicopters.
Really? Wow! Already in 78, 79.
Oh yeah, George the Duke Machen, who was our governor before Reagan, started a thing called CAMP. It was California Against
that's
Marijuana
still
Planters,
going, right?
I don't know. I haven't been to California in a long time.
Well, I listen to this rap group Mendo Dope, and they still rap about camp sometimes.
Okay, yeah, Mendocino County, Golden Triangle.
Yeah.
So, and that was actually the last. That wasn't Mendocino County, but it was up in the Golden Triangle. Was the last time that I grew outdoors in California, and then from then on, I took a couple years off. Mm-hmm. Well, we got caught with some of our with our cute little weeds. So
you got caught out there at the grow.
No, we got caught being teenagers selling to police officers.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, that's how it went down. Yeah.
So this is after. Is this after the blood and bone hippies teaching you how to grow?
Yeah, because it was the good weed that I got caught.
So you had finished the season, you trimmed it all up, and now you're in town selling it.
Yeah, well, you can call it trim. We didn't trim back then like we did.
Okay.
It didn't happen that way.
Okay, all right.
We would strip it off and put it in garbage. But there was a lot of stem, and it was all in garbage bags.
Okay.
The big black garbage bag. We dried in gunny sacks.
Oh, okay. All right.
Hanging gunny sacks.
Okay.
And it was much cruder. Everything was cruder.
So gunny sacks. You mean a burlap sack?
Oh, yeah, a burlap bag. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wanted to make sure because like it's an older
term. Well, I'm an older guy now. So.
Well, right, but that's like that. I haven't heard that term in a while, and I want for our listeners. Some of them might be younger; they might not know what a gunny sack is.
Right. So it was almost like catch as catch can. We would. When you got a lot of weed and you're trying to dry it, I mean, you've seen the struggles that I've had just growing my small crops.
Well, even my backyard garden here, if too many plants finish at once, I'm having trouble fitting it in my garage.
Exactly.
Or I have the opposite problem. I don't fill up my garage, and then I'm sad about it.
Right. So then I took a couple years off after that because and from there on, it all went indoors.
Right.
Everything went indoors from then on out.
Okay.
I never grew outdoors again until see, I bought the place that you know about.
Yeah.
You've been to my house. I bought that place in 2010.
Okay.
And I assisted other people without, consulting, bringing in the dirt, stuff like that with outdoor crops. I stayed indoors until 2010.
Okay.
Everything was indoors. I was not going to take the chance.
What changed in 2010 for you?
That property and the laws.
Medical became more accessible?
Way more accessible. Being an activist,
Right.
And but I had to stay legal all the time. Because it started here where we could only have 4 plants.
Right.
And 4 above a foot and 3 clones. So our whole thing was, and you've seen the picture of the 20-foot, right? It's 20 feet high and 20 feet down.
There's still people that grow like out there in Merlin, out in the hills, out there in what's the other big town out past Applegate? Murphy's
and
one. Williams is a huge one. Yeah, I actually got the opportunity.
That's where
to
those pictures are from.
Yeah.
I worked with the.
Okay.
I'll just call, and I don't mean anything derogatory like this. It's just I call them the hippies.
Oh yeah,
I worked with the hippies out there.
Right, the hippies. So so for people who don't know the history of the area of Southern Oregon and Northern California, a lot of the hippies came out to these rural areas to kind of be back to the landers, and a lot of the way they made money in order to float all their expenses was by growing guerilla cannabis on their small farms.
Well, and now that statute of limitations is up, almost all of the activism, the bumper stickers, the polling, the offices, the gathering of signatures, all that was funded by pot. Almost. Now, we did get checks from places like the Marijuana Policy Project, that's out of Washington, D.C., and a lot of people don't know this. That was started by a man named Peter Lewis, who he's passed away now, rest in peace, but he was the owner of Progressive Insurance.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Flow.
Okay.
Every year he would write a check for $10,000 to Voter Power.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, and then one of the really big donors was from Austin, Texas.
Okay.
He owned the Fog Foundation. He has a chain of what Spencer's Gifts.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, they're called Planet K stores, and it's a combination of Spencer's Gifts.
Okay.
A porn. Like
an 18 plus like mag shop where they have a bunch of porn in
there, and then also as a cover, he sold lights for like iguanas and stuff. But grow equipment,
grow your tomatoes, right?
Right, and he also somehow or another owned the rights to The Emperor Wears No Clothes. It was written by Jack Herer.
Okay.
I know that I've shown you my copy of The Emperor Wears No Clothes.
It's a pretty infamous book, both in the hemp activism circle and cannabis circles. It's
it was written by Jack.
Yeah.
And so
not just a strain, originally a cannabis activist.
Yeah, he came here. Yeah, we knew him. He wrote that book here in Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and now for the first time I wasn't keeping track. I lost track of even where I was.
Oh, so you had just gotten busted after growing with blood and bone.
Oh, that's right. And we stayed indoors. So now I'm into the activism. That's right.
So you're in 2010. You got the property like I've seen, and you've done your first outdoor grow, and you're getting involved in all the activism, right? Or you've already been involved?
Oh no, I've been involved in the activism since it was our first one was Measure 74 was our second to get dispensaries. And before that was Measure 69, I believe. And anyway, so we were getting involved in the activism to growing weed. And it was like we were doing everything.
Right.
And we were doing it all ourselves. And people think that it was some big movement. I can assure you it wasn't. Yeah. There was just a handful of us. Now, we did have a lot of what we called Klingons, people that would just show up because they wanted free weed.
Yeah.
And then, and I'm pretty sure in the beginning, law enforcement, undercover people showed up, you know.
I'm sure.
I had a lot of strange encounters when we were setting up our booths because we would set up booths at all the fairs, all the festivals, everything. And so we had a lot of contact. It was a lot of, excuse me, sir, you registered to vote?
Yeah.
Are you registered to vote? You registered to vote? And then
hitting up people outside of places for signatures.
Oh, outside of the post offices, which those were adventures in and of themselves. Okay, we got spit on. We got violent
people like for cannabis activism.
Oh yeah, excuse me, sir. You registered to vote? And then you'd have your signature, your clipboard. And so we can have medical marijuana dispensaries. Because medical marijuana was legal, but there was no dispensary.
You had to grow it for yourself or get it from somebody.
Or get it from your grower or caregiver,
right.
Which became such a scam. They just kept ripping off the patients. A lot of people claimed they were growers and they would grow for a patient and fail the crop. You know, and it was bad for patients. It was really good for card stackers. You know, we did have that one little gray area here in Oregon where you could have as many cards as you wanted. And
I had met growers that had like baseball card collector things full of cards. Yeah, it was nuts.
Yeah, and way out of line.
No, I never personally worked with any of those guys. Most of the people that I worked with were small farmers, real small, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So. And then finally, we just kept at it, and we kept at it, and during the activism, that's why I want to mention a guy.
Yeah.
And his name was John Walsh, not to be confused with the John Walsh from America's Most Wanted.
Okay, all right.
This was our John Walsh, and without this guy, at one point he gathered over 10,000 signatures.
Wow.
And without this guy, I'm not going to say he was a total unsung hero because he did make it to High Times Freedom Fighter of the Month.
Oh, cool.
Okay, they did get him in there. I think he should have been Freedom Fighter of the Year, maybe even in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Because there's other people in the High Times Hall of Fame. For example, Elvie Masika was one of the 6 people that got her marijuana from the government.
Oh,
she would come in the can, and she would come here regularly and was active with us.
Okay.
She would donate the empty can, empty of course, and the proceeds we would auction it off, and the proceeds would go.
That's fun. And so you could go if you were an aficionado, you could buy one of the government weed cans.
Right, and that's how
awesome.
we raised. Which we sold the books, and we sold newspapers, and we sold every hemp thing. You know, trying to raise money. Right, and keeping a cover.
Right,
you know,
there's got to be some legitimate source of money that's not bags of
exactly.
weed.
And so this guy, he was one of the ones that put in the hard work.
Right.
He stood there at the Eugene Saturday Market every Saturday for years, registering people. Everybody in Eugene, whether they're into marijuana or not, knows who this guy was.
Right.
So anyway, he passed away in 2016.
Yeah.
And his motto was, "We got to get organized." And he was a different kind of a guy. I called him the Rain Man, and I didn't mean it in any derogatory term because I love the guy. But he was pretty high on the spectrum.
Okay.
And he and I wound up on the road together, and we had many adventures.
Right. It surprised me when I first started getting involved with growers in Oregon how many people were being taken care of by the scene, but also how many people who were in the scene that were, let's say, neurodivergent.
Yes. Boy, that's a very politically correct way to put it.
And that's how I'm going to put it.
Yeah. At one point, we were in Roseburg, Oregon, and we had our booth set up at their county fair. And sometimes people were mean to us, but then there were other people that would come in and treat us like celebrities.
Right.
We got the royal treatment. And being the new guy, I stayed behind when the rest of the group got invited to these people's house. Very, very wealthy, from what I understood. I didn't see the house.
Right.
But from what I was told, the place was just immaculate. Had Haitian cotton sofas and wool rugs, and it was just this amazing place.
Okay.
And they brought John with them. And John did have some hygiene issues. And
right.
He had a little bit of foot odor, and it was one of those houses where everybody had to take their shoes off, Yeah. And well, it turns out he wound up blowing the whole place up with his feet. He absolutely blew the place up.
Was he one of those like hippie people that didn't shower but like every so often?
Every so often.
Okay, yeah.
Whether he needed it or not. and the most lovable guy you'll ever want to meet. And so they kind of shuffled him out of there.
Uh-huh.
And they brought him back down to the county fair, to the booth, and somebody always had to be with him. Somebody had to kind of stay with him, as he would get lost sometimes. Brought him back to me, and then they went back to the soiree.
Right.
John was a very political guy, obviously.
Right.
Always saying we got to get organized, and he would he had a lot of speeches that he gave, and he was right in the middle of one of those speeches, and he was just going off. It had something to do with George Bush, I'm sure.
Okay.
And which was, he felt that George Bush was his nemesis in life, and he did not like George Bush. So he's going on and on and on, and then right in mid-sentence, he stopped, and he stared down at his feet. And I said, "John, what's wrong?" And he looked up at me with the innocence of a child and sad, and he says, "These aren't my shoes."
So he put the wrong shoes on.
Put the wrong shoes on and headed out.
Oh no!
Yeah, that was just one of our many.
Give those
many
shoes back.
No.
Oh no!
And the poor person, whoever it was,
has his shoes now. Oh man! And if you don't find those,
right,
within a couple hours, that smell is in your house for a while now.
Yeah, he blew it up pretty good. But and you just can't take anything away from the guy, because without this guy and his determination, there's a possibility we could be a couple of years behind where we are right now.
Yeah.
I mean, which now I say that, I mean, it's all been legal now for so long that I forget sometimes that it even is.
It's weird because and before we move on, like, let's all, in memory of John Walsh, let's all take a moment.
Yeah.
You can reach me, Uncle Dig, on Instagram at Uncle Dig. The bumper music on this podcast was produced by Chad DeVilliers on ukulele. He can be followed on YouTube at Ukuleles Are Stupid or on Instagram at Chadwick Enterprises. Thank you for listening to the Bagseed Chronicles.